Hello everyone, welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining this PAC webinar today. We will start now. This webinar on the European cloud market will be recorded and we will share the slides with you afterwards. I am Hugo Piala, member here in Paris of the French marketing and sales team. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you would like to contact me, and it will be a pleasure to speak with you. If you are one of our CITSI customer, I remind you that you have access to all of the detailed data that will be presented today, along with all of our CITSI documents. You simply have to log into citsi.pacanalyst.com with your professional email. Also, if you have any questions during this webinar, please write them in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer them in the end. Now let's jump right into the latest trends of the cloud ecosystem market in Europe. I am very happy to introduce you to Eric Beaudet, Senior Analyst here at PAC. Eric, hello, we cannot wait to hear the insight you are going to share with us today. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Hugo, for that very nice introduction. Let's jump right in. Today, I'll make a presentation on the drivers of the cloud market in Europe. My presentation will consist of 4 different parts. First of all, I'll try to present to you what really are the critical trends and we're seeing driving the cloud services market in Europe. And the second part will dive into different geographies and see that actually the European cloud market is not one, but over 20 different markets with different trends and different ecosystems. And finally, on the third part, I'll present to you one of our products, which is a PAC radar, and to show you how it really underlines and enables us to analyze the different strategies of IT suppliers in a very crowded cloud market. And we'll end the webinar with a Q&A. So as Hugo said, please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A, and we'll take a few minutes at the end of the webinar to answer the most we can. So let's start with the trends driving the cloud services market in Europe. I'll start off by just presenting to you what we call the SITS market at PAC, which is the software and IT services market in Western Europe. Basically, we're very lucky. We're working in an ecosystem which is very dynamic. And although we've seen that growth has slowed down over the past few quarters, PAC still expects a 2024 growth of over 5% for the software and IT service segment, slightly less than the 6.5% registered in 2023, but still quite healthy. And that strong growth is expected to be continued over the next few years until 2028. All segments of the market are dynamic. The most dynamic one being, of course, cloud platforms, which are the public PaaS platforms, thanks to the success of the hyperscalers. Secondly is really SaaS, and software, SaaS and software, which is registering 6.5% growth over the next few years. And finally, the slowest growing, but still a strongly growing segment is the IT services segment with 4% expected growth over the next few years. So basically a strongly growing segment, market on all segments of the market. But what are the drivers behind that solid growth? Well, we see 5. The first 4 are really typical subjects. The first one is data. Really, we see that enterprises are trying to monetize not just their data for internal purposes, but are really trying to put more value on all of the data they have, both from a customer and an internal point of view. Second strongly growing market, and all of these are growing above 10% a year, is cybersecurity. We've seen that cyber threats have continued to increase, and hence many companies are increasing their cybersecurity budget, and these are taking a larger part of their IT services investment year after year as the subject is gaining in importance. The third real driver right now is generative AI. although the market is still very small in absolute terms, it's registering one of the strongest growth. And we see that all sectors and even all departments of companies can be affected and can benefit from generative AI. So we'll really see it as an extremely dynamic market over the next few years. Finally, 4 is sustainability, not just driven by increased regulation, but also driven by interest from investors and customers. Sustainability is becoming a key focus area of investments, and IT is really seen as a leverage and a key tool to be able to reduce carbon emissions. And the 5th trend, growing 10%, is one which is actually on which all the 4 others is built, and it's the move to multi and hybrid cloud. The cloud market is expected, and cloud services market is expected to grow 11% in Europe over the next few years. And it's the precondition to be able to really leverage all of the other growing segments, such as data, cybersecurity, and generative AI. So what does that mean in number when we say that the multi and hybrid cloud market is dynamic? Well, in number, this is the same CTC market as I've presented to you in the first slide, growing. But what we see is that within that market, cloud is really becoming the subject of investment. In 2023, for the first time, over 50% of CTC investments were made within cloud. These include everything, whether they're IT services, software, and platform. But we see that clearly cloud is now the area of investment, and we expect that cloud by the end of the decade will represent close to 3/4 of total software investment. So cloud growing above 10%, but that also means that if we look at traditional IT architecture, we have declining revenues of close to -5% expected over the next few years. Of course, cloud growth is not equal on all segments. We've identified 3 main IT services segments around cloud. All 3 are growing, but not from all the same base and not at the same speed. One area which is really growing very little is what we call managed cloud for hosted and in-house private clouds. Contrarily to some of our peers, we still do expect growth over the next few years, but very low at 0.08%. We're not ones who expect that market to disappear completely in the face of public cloud, because we do think that there is interest in private solutions, whether for security, for regulation reasons, or even because we'll have an increase in what we call edge cloud, which is in a company's infrastructure means that it's actually an in-house or a private cloud and not shared within different customers. The fastest growing segment is, of course, total managed public cloud. That's thanks to the very strong growth registered by the hyperscalers. And there's a whole ecosystem of services being built around it. Although that starts from the smallest base, it will be over the next few years, and we do expect it to be by far the strongest growing segment. And finally, with also double-digit growth, is the largest part, and it's what we call cloud CNSI, consulting and system integration. That's the largest market, and contrarily to traditional IT services, where you had a lot of managed services and a little bit of consulting, in cloud, we see that a large chunk of the market is related to that consulting and system integration. Indeed, really to leverage the added value of cloud, we need not just a lift and shift approach, but we need a business transformation approach. And that means that that consulting segment is growing extremely quickly. So what are the main drivers for this cloud growth? Well, the first one, and why are companies adopting cloud so rapidly? Well, the first one is the operational agility and flexibility it brings. That means that if you need to be able to increase capacity quickly, access new service quickly, it's really seen as a business accelerator and not just as an IT migration. The second key driver is really SaaS and verticalized cloud solution. Basically, by moving to the cloud, or actually you have much more innovation coming into SaaS, and we're seeing a lot of software providers even announcing that they will stop improving their on-premise solution and make all of the latest innovation available only in a SaaS mode. So accessing these latest innovation by software providers are a key driver to cloud adoption. Third is cloud-enabled innovation and access to new tools, whether they be it AI, generative AI, all of these tools are made available. We have a lot of service catalogs available on cloud and by hyperscalers and by IT software providers also, which are all very attractive for companies because thanks to cloud, they will have access to these tools and will be able to gain a lot of speed and time in deployment compared to on-premise solutions. And finally, cloud enables as a service model. If you were to listen to this presentation a few years ago, cloud was seen as a way to reduce cost. It's not anymore. We often see that cloud might even cost more than expected, but on a financial standpoint, it's not necessarily the cost that's the driver, but the model where you change CapEx to OpEx and where you have that flexibility and on-demand capacity. On the downside, there are some obstacles to cloud adoption, and we've identified 4 main ones. The first one is often for smaller companies, the high churn and lack of skilled workforce, whether they be a cloud architect or data experts. We've seen over the past few years a higher attrition than in historical periods, and that demand for talent on these high growth technologies is in high demand. But that can actually be seen as an opportunity for IT service suppliers because they do have that skilled workforce and they do have that experience. The second obstacle is the complexity of architectures and cost control. I've already mentioned what we realize now is that often cloud actually costs more than initially planned, and companies often end up with multiple cloud providers. So after a first phase of really deployment to the cloud, we're seeing a second phase of optimization. What workload should go where, private, public, on what public provider, and the deployment of FinOps tools enable that better optimization of cloud usage. A third obstacle is security and sovereignty of data. That's also an issue that's often raised. Sure, I want to go to the cloud. I want access that flexibility, that speed, these services. But what about the security of my data? For that, we're seeing some sovereign cloud offerings appearing. But it's a key issue for many companies, especially in the regulated segments, such as the public sector or the banking sector. And finally, the last obstacle is organization silos. That's key. As I've told you before, cloud, to really get the value added of the cloud, you do not do a lift and shift. You have to change the method and bring much closer the business organization to the IT departments. And it's only when these two silos, business and IT, are really merged that you can, in good communication, that you can really get all of the benefits to the cloud, that they come impact not just the IT organization, but also the business side of things. To finish on the main trends, I want to underline that how cloud is often seen as a crucial also to reach ESG goals and to lower carbon footprint. In a CXO survey and a survey PAC did, we realized that 88% of European companies expect their IT function to play an important role in reducing carbon emissions. And when we look at the different technologies which are currently being implemented, which are listed here on the right, we see that 3 out of the 5 most used, whether they're remote collaboration tools, infrastructure optimization with digital twins, or migrating on-premise data centers to more efficient cloud data centers, well, these 3 are cloud-driven. So we clearly, by adopting cloud, we can have a clear impact on the carbon footprint, and it's another driver for cloud adoption. So this is for the overall European market trends in cloud, but Europe is much more complicated than Western Europe as I've presented. Now we're going to quickly get into deep dive in different geographies and see how trends and actors and the ecosystem actually differs quite substantially between different countries. So here's a quick map of Europe, and I don't want to comment, and I'm not here to comment about GDP growth of the different countries. If I put this slide on, it's just that you have an idea of the size of the different economies before I delve into the cloud services market of each of these countries. What we see is by far Germany is the largest country, followed by France and UK, which are more or less the same size. Italy and Spain are in another third. And finally, we have smaller northern geographies such as the Netherlands and Sweden. No recession is expected in Europe. Every country is expected to post organic growth this year, although below 1% for the euro area, so a very slight economic growth. Nonetheless, if we look at the same graph, but on the cloud services market, we have a completely different picture. First of all, we saw that Germany was the largest economy in Europe, but it's actually the UK, which has by far the largest cloud services market. And then we notice that the Netherlands and Sweden, which were by far the smallest economy, have actually cloud services market, which are almost as big, or for the Netherlands, even bigger than Spain and Italy. So here we have basically two ideas on this slide. The first one is that the maturity of different European markets is very different. The UK and Germany and Nordic countries have a very high cloud maturity compared to other geographies such as Italy and Spain. The second idea I want to show is that every single country here will post very strong growth on cloud, even though the economy is weak, but with different trends, having Italy and Spain with the strongest expected growth, as they have the less mature market. So there will be a catch-up. And with the same idea, we expect growth in the UK to be the slowest over the next few years, as it's the most mature market today. Now, as for players, here is the top 10 of leading cloud services providers in Europe. To all of you who are actually City customers, we will send you the slides, and with this link, you will be able to have not just the ranking, but the expected revenues for each of these actors, the expected growth overall in Europe and every different geographies. My idea today is not to comment on every single individual actor, but just to show that the European ecosystem is extremely varied. One, varied in terms of geography of suppliers. We see in this top 10 that we have only 2 European actors, Capgemini and Atos. We have 3 Indian actors in TCS, Infosys, and Wipro, and some American ones. So very varied geographically, and also very varied in terms of performance. We have some actors which are performing extremely well, thanks to a high exposition to consulting and CNSI, the highest growth market. So actors such as Accenture, TCS, Deloitte are performing quite well. Others, which are very much exposed to the infrastructure space, such as Atos, DXC, Kyndryl, are on the other hand, performing with much, are actually underperforming the actual market growth. The second idea on this is that in Europe, these are the top 10 players, but that does not mean anything according to different geographies. We have actually in Europe 20 different markets with real different profile of actors. I've underlined for you here 2 countries just to show you that difference. On the left, we have the top 10 cloud service providers in the UK, and we see the list, which is very close to the one in Europe. That means it's the top 10 actors which are supplying services to the northern economies, which are the most open and well-developed, as we've seen. And that means that it's also more open to outsourcing, such as, and we see in the top 10, some even a lot of Indian actors, such as TCS, Infosys, and Cognizant. On the contrary, in France, completely different profile. We have between the two only a few names that are the same. And in France, we also have actually 7 out of the 10 names, which are French suppliers. So we see that if in the UK or the Netherlands or in some geographies, we're very open to large international suppliers, other geographies such as France and Italy are completely different and put a lot of premium to local suppliers. We don't have 10 years of ranking on IT cloud services because cloud was really just beginning 10 years ago. But these are IT services as a whole, our rankings over 10 years. What I want to show you here is that in a decade, we're in a sector that things change extremely quickly. In 10 years, 5 names that were there in 2013 have disappeared from our top 10. The HP, T-Systems, CGI, Capita, Fujitsu disappeared. It really underlines how things are moving quickly and how it is important for IT service providers to be strong on cloud, which is driving the market today, to be able to gain share tomorrow. If we look at our ranking today, 2023, will the Atos, DXC, and Kyndryl of this world, which are very much focused on infrastructure, be there in a decade from now? Well, it's not sure. So things change quickly, and IT service providers need to adapt. So with that in mind, what are the success factors of IT service providers on cloud? Well, we've seen 4 really key for an IT service provider to outperform. The first is really talents and training. It's extremely important, and we've seen where we have a lot of change in people from company to company to have high attrition rates. It's very important to invest in training and to invest in careers so that we decrease our attrition rate and become attractive to the workforce. Secondly, it's extremely important to invest in CNSI consulting capabilities. We've seen it's the fastest growing area of the market, but also cloud means change. It means to change the way you do fundamentally your business and not just your RT architecture. For that, you need consulting capabilities, and that's linked to the number 3. You need sectorial skills and competencies. We're seeing more and more the importance of being able to have sectorial solution as cloud is really bringing that added value to the different business sectors. Finally, growth is driven also by the public hyperscalers, the Azure, AWS, and GCP of this world. And therefore, it's very important to have strong partnerships and a lot of certifications with these hyperscalers in order to benefit from the services and the strongly growing services which are attached to them. That's a good change to the third section, which is how do you differentiate in such a crowded market? Well, basically, to do that, I want to present you one of our products, which is called a PAC radar. A PAC radar is actually an in-depth analysis of a service provider on a given technology. It's not just a ranking, as we've showed you, because we do publish rankings on many sectors, subsectors, and segments of the market, but they're just rankings according to revenue. The PAC radars goes much more in depth because we'll look only at 20 to 25 providers on one given technology, but we'll go in depth. We'll submit a questionnaire, we'll do a provider briefing, and we'll look at over 50 criteria to do an analysis and classification. Basically, as hyperscaler are so important, we've done 3 over the past 3 years around the hyperscalers in Europe. We did one around Azure in 2022, around AWS services last year, and one around GCP is going to come out at the end of October or beginning of November. And so what are these and how are they built? Well, basically on a graph, we'll look at 20 to 25 providers are based on 2 axes. On a vertical axis, we'll put competence, where we have basically quantitative data, whether they have a dedicated business unit, how much do they invest, the level of investments, the number of certified employees, All of these are tangible data where we can see how competent an IT supplier is on a certain technology. But just that gives us just one axis. The other axis is what we call market strength. And here we also have some quantitative data, such as the cloud revenues and the dedicated hyperscaler revenue in one given geography, but also a lot of qualitative elements. What's the proximity with the hyperscaler? Are they very close in the given market? Do they have an installed base and client notoriety? All that is very important to be able to have a local play, because as we've seen, the ecosystem of actors varies greatly from one country to the next. So what does that give us? I've just given you one example on our PAC radar of Azure here in France. Well, these are the 25 actors that were assessed. And what we see is if you look at the top 10 on a vertical axis, so the top 10 with the best competence, we often see the global actors such as Accenture and Capgemini, but also the Indian players, the TCS, Cognizant, Infosys, Wipro of this world. They are very competent. They have the tools, they have the automation, they have the number of people. But that's just one way to look at it. Here in France, you have to also look at the market strength. Now you have to look at the ones who are the more on the right of this. And here we'll see more local players such as Orange, Devoteam, Axions, Easy Team. These are much smaller. They don't have the competence the Indians have, but they have more local players. They have French-speaking teams. They have already clients here which with good references. And all that gives them a market strength advantage. So this is the example of the PAC radar, and one will come out on GCP in the next week. Just to finish, here is a bit of a research agenda of our next documents to be published. As I've mentioned, in Q4, we'll have 2 radars coming out, the Google Cloud Services, one for Europe, but also we'll do France, UK, and Germany. And we'll also have a ServiceNow services focused radar in Q4. On top of that, we have the rankings I've showed you and what we call CXO, which are surveys on different topics, which you can also access through our CITSI plan. So this is for me for the presentation, a quick overview, and 25 minutes. I know we can't dwell in depth, but please feel free to ask any questions you would like, and we'll take a few minutes to answer these. Hugo, up to you, please, if you see any.
Thank you. We received a lot of questions, and I hope we are going to be able to answer to all of them. First, Eric, thank you very much for this presentation. It was very interesting to hear your insights. You haven't talked much about sovereign cloud. We received a question. What is the place of sovereignty in Europe, in the European market looking forward? And what are the prospects that you see for this market?
Okay, well, on sovereign cloud, we do see a lot of traction, but I have 2 caveats to that. The first one is that traction is not the same everywhere. Some countries, such as France, have a very high demand for sovereign solutions. Others, often more smaller geographies, such as Belgium or the Netherlands, have less of an appetite. And the secondly is if we do see that the market, the sovereign cloud market, will actually grow substantially, we don't know where we feel that the market is actually quite crowded. We have quite a few players offering different solutions for a market that will be or represent just a small fraction of the total IT services market. So it's going to be extremely competitive. And we're not sure that there will be a place for all of the actors who have made announcements up to now.
Okay, so thank you very much, Eric. I see that we are going now over time. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out to Eric or I through LinkedIn. You are going to receive also Eric's personal details in case you would like to reach out to him directly. Eric, thank you again for this very interesting webinar. I will remind to all of you that we will share the slides with you afterwards, and this webinar has been recorded, so you're going to be able to share it with some of your colleagues if you would like to. And if you are one of our CCC customer, I want to remind you that you also have access to all of the detailed data that has been presented in this webinar and more on our CCC platform. You just need to log into your account by using your professional email on ctc.pacanalyst.com. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Have a great day. Bye.